Right, Sheriffs, thank you for joining me once again. Unfortunately, we have to deal with people who are recidivist offenders, people who continue to want to be wrong on the interwebs. We're dealing with Nicholas Verhoeven, student, again, and Gil Carvalho, imbecile, again, unfortunately. So let's hear what they've got to say and put it right where it's wrong, which, spoiler, boys and girls, guess what? Once again, is pretty much everywhere. Today they want to tell us all about heart disease and lipoproteins. Only everything they've got to say is based on fantasy rather than actual science or appreciation of actual science. So let's point to how that is so, shall we? Stick around. Here it comes.
Hi. So you may be one of those people that tries to avoid using pharmaceutical interventions where possible. When it comes to heart disease risk, one of the...
Okay, let's stop you right there, Nicholas, on a couple of points before we even get rolling. Number one, there are no studies extant that can inform us on risk of heart disease as that relates to any aspect of nutrition, lipoproteins, or anything remotely connected or similar. These studies simply do not exist. Risk is a cause and effect statement. Risk implies danger. Danger has a mechanism. There is no accepted mechanism by which lipoproteins could possibly cause heart disease to occur. These are the facts, unfortunately, whether you like them or not, Nicholas. Secondly, at the bottom of the screen, under your name there, you have written PhD, and then after that, in brackets, you've put a little C. The C stands for candidate, boys and girls, in case you didn't know. Nicholas is a student, not the holder of a PhD, and it is vastly disingenuous and dishonest for him to present himself as being someone who is at the level of a PhD holding individual in terms of knowledge, credence, experience, and science, because he simply isn't. Okay? So, and we'll get to Gil when we get to him in terms of his credibility.
Factors that increases risk.
There are no studies that have been shown to increase risk, Nicholas. Whose risk are you talking about? My risk? Please point to a study that informs me about my individual risk of heart disease. Shall we wait for that? Yes, I thought not. There isn't one, Nicholas. They don't exist.
Generally is an abnormally high level of lipoproteins.
That's not an indicator of risk. Association does not inform on causality. Risk is a cause and effect statement. We're done. The association, by the way, is very, very poor at best between any of the lipoproteins or their subfractions or particle sizes or anything else and heart disease incidence. Even if the associations were powerful, that still does not inform us on cause and effect, ergo hazard, risk, odds, or anything remotely similar kind of statements. No.
Which are these cholesterol and fat-containing vessels in our body. They serve an important function, but too many are a problem.
Prove it. And tell us how much is too many. On the basis of what? No? Should we wait for that? Absolutely no science exists that can inform us upon that question.
So, how do we make sure that our lipoprotein burden remains low?
Burden, you say? The very thing that carries lipids in your blood to where it needs to be so that it can do what it needs to do is a burden? No, Nicholas. Absolute rubbish.
Without drugs. Well, I had the distinct honor of having a discussion with Dr. Gil Carvalho.
Ah, yes, Gil Carvalho.
On a number of health topics, from fasting causing insulin resistance.
Number one, insulin resistance is a construct. Number two, there is no evidence that fasting causes it to occur, Nicholas. Number 3, the kind of so-called insulin resistance that you will see in an individual who has been fasting for a period is not pathological. It's adaptive. You foolish boy who should be concentrating on his studies. Remember, you're a student.
What to look out for to improve longevity and more.
There are no studies that can inform us on how to improve longevity either, Nicholas. That is a cause and effect claim. Shall we wait for some evidence of a cause and effect relationship between anything and longevity? Experiments with genetic twins locked in their separate labs for their entire lifespans with every aspect of their lives controlled except the thing you want to point the finger of blame at for longevity. Doesn't exist, Nicholas, still.
And one topic that Dr. Carvalho went into some depth on how to love...
You mean not Dr. Carvalho, really? Gil Carvalho has, as far as I can tell, never worked a single day in his life as a medical professional, as an allopathic physician. Sure, he qualified as such, just like not Dr. Greger did, and not Dr. Saladino. None of them have ever practiced medicine. So no credibility is to be had by throwing around a professional title doctor, because it's meaningless in this particular context. Absolutely meaningless.
Lower our ApoB levels, which is an accurate marker of our overall lipoprotein burden.
Again, lipoproteins, not lipoproteins, lipoproteins are not a burden.
Gil has a medical doctorate and also
yeah, but has never practiced medicine, so what?
earned a PhD in biology as well.
And again, he has a PhD, but has he ever actually produced any reasonable number of peer-reviewed publications as an independent research scientist, or indeed held down a position teaching postgraduate students in a university setting, for example, contributing to knowledge? No, he hasn't done that either. He has a couple of bits of paper to his name. What he also has is a very serious case of Dunning-Kruger and a complete lack of understanding of the limits of his competence. Because his PhD is in neuroscience, not lipidology or human nutrition. Some physicians know a lot about nutrition, and it's fine for them to say, I don't care who talks about nutrition publicly, so long as what they say is correct. And what Gil Carvalho has to say is demonstrably incorrect. And if you want to see examples of that, do a search on all my social media offerings for repositories of my videos, where on multiple occasions I have dealt with this absolute buffoon Gil Carvalho and torn him 7 or 8 new anal orifices every time. Precisely because of his vast incompetence, his destitution of understanding of the material he's talking about. If you don't know where to find my other repositories of videos which are not on the YouTubes, you might take an odyssey of discovery to find it. And having taken such an odyssey, you might see S-E-E on the end of your odyssey where those things are. Go check it out. In the meantime, let's hear some more nonsense, errant pap and pustulous, ridiculous garbage from Gil Carvalho, shall we?
Runs an excellent nutrition-focused channel.
No, he doesn't run an excellent channel at all, Nicholas. It's garbage from top to bottom. Full of disinformation, full of ignorance, full of Dunning-Kruger. No value in it whatsoever.
Called Nutrition Made Simple.
Nutrition Made Incorrect. Or Lies Gil Carvalho Told Me would also be good names for his channel.
I love his work.
Well, that shows very poor judgment on your part, as Nicholas does presenting yourself as being a credentialed and credible individual in the field of science when, son, you are not.
And I think you'll love this discussion in its entirety.
You think wrong.
In this episode, you will hear a brief background on ApoB, how it can contribute to heart disease risk.
It doesn't, though.
Understand
At risk, no. No, not risk. Remember, there are no studies that inform on risk still.
the problems of clearance and creation, as well as, of course, how to fix it.
It doesn't need fixing. The level of ApoB in a person's blood at any given time is under the control of that person's genes. Those genes know what they're doing, Nicholas, and should be just left to get on with it. Really? This is not something for us to be concerned about.
I'll supply graphics and references as Dr. Carvalho speaks.
Yes, I've seen the references. I've had a quick look through the references before I started recording this video. Not one of them informs cause and effect on anything and anything else. Heart disease and ApoB. Not one of them.
You can find the references linked to this content.
Yes, as I said, they're worthless, though, for the moot point. The moot point here being that you believe ApoB to be causal in heart disease, and it isn't.
Without further ado, here is Gil.
So ApoB is a protein. It's short for apolipoprotein B. So apolipoprotein B. And these are essentially tags that maybe I should take a step back and explain what a lipoprotein is, just in case people aren't familiar with it.
Just a quick side note, apologies for the quality of the audio coming through from Gil Carvalho. It's on his end, it's on the video, on the YouTubes that this cutting out of the audio is occurring. It's nothing to do with what I've done.
So these lipids, these fats travel around in our blood. Cholesterol, you've heard of triglycerides. These things travel around in our blood, but they don't, oil and water don't mix, right? So they can't travel, like they can't just float around, they would clump up. So they need a vehicle to transport them around. So you can imagine a car or a truck or a boat, whatever analogy fits, to transport fats back and forth in between our tissue.
None of those would fit. If you need an analogy, it would be submarine.
Through the bloodstream. And so these are the lipoproteins. They're basically spheres of, lipo means fat and protein means protein. Lipoproteins are essentially these tiny clumps of protein and fat. They look kind of like microscopic tennis balls.
They really don't.
And so the magic there is that the parts of the fat that don't connect well, that don't get along well with water, are facing the inside, and vice versa. Then the proteins and the parts of the...
You can tell this bloke has never actually been a teacher or an educator in any way. Man, he's battling to get across a very, very simple concept that we can get in 3 seconds flat. Why are we taking so long over this?
The parts of the fat that are polar, that do get along with water, are facing the outside. So nature came up with this elegant solution to transport our fats around.
And then it completely forgot how elegant it was and told your genes to make too much of the stuff so that you're going to die. Fucking idiot.
So there are a number of these lipoproteins, 2 main families, and one of these families is the ApoB carrying lipoproteins. So they have this tag called the ApoB or lipoprotein B that identifies them. And the reason this is relevant is because it's this family that is atherogenic.
No, false. There are no established atherogenic lipoproteins at all, not any of them. Atherogenic is a cause and effect statement. It means to cause atherosclerosis. It is explicitly a cause and effect statement, and it is false. There is no evidence to support the claim extant anywhere. We're done. But you're not done. You've still got 4/5 of your video remaining. Let's hear it.
Atherogenic just means cause.
Atherogenic means cause, yes. And there is no evidence to support cause and effect here. It's theology, not science.
This plaque in the arteries. And so...
why doesn't it cause plaque in the veins, Gil? Why not?
Atherosclerotic heart disease, cardiovascular disease. The other family is the HDL family, which you've also heard of, and that doesn't cause problems. So...
Oh, the exact same is true of all the lipoproteins, Gil. You foolish lad. They all exist precisely because they are encoded for by a length of DNA, which has survived the entirety of existence of DNA, however long that may have been. Those genes really do know what they're doing. Positive and negative selection pressures have preserved those genes. Every single one of those lipoproteins exists because it has a role to play. Simple.
that's why we care about ApoB. And then the other thing
No, people that care about ApoB are people who are ignorant, people who have been fooled by an ideology, people who don't understand the first most basic tenet of experimental science, which is that association cannot inform on cause and effect. We are still done. You're still not done.
It's very convenient is that each one of these lipoproteins carries one copy of ApoB. So you can measure the number of ApoB molecules in a unit of blood.
So what?
And count the number of lipoproteins that are present. So that's
so what?
Very, very handy.
No, it isn't. It's of no utility whatever.
And just very briefly, decades and decades of research.
Cite it. Cite me decades and decades of research, Gil. Shall we wait? No, I thought not.
Have pointed primarily to the number of these ApoB-carrying lipoproteins as the key factor as far as lipids go, that is the determinant of cardiovascular risk.
False. Determinant of risk is a cause and effect statement, Gil. It is not supported by science. No studies are extant anywhere in the world that can support that ridiculous and false claim. We're still done. And you're still an ignoramus. You're still an imbecile. You're still a Dunning-Kruger sufferer right outside of your lane of expertise who really, frankly, ought to shut up.
So it explains risk.
No, it doesn't. No. False again.
Better than all of the other metrics, and it's
You mean it's a better associate than some of the other associates? That doesn't make it of any more utility. Neither does it and make it any better at informing on cause and effect, because it still informs on cause and effect, not one jot, not one iota, not at all. Still.
It's most of the evidence indicates it's the causative factor.
No, it isn't. There is no evidence of causative factor here. There is no evidence of cause and effect extant anywhere. Lie. Falsehood. Or at the very, very least, incompetence from you, Gil Carvalho. Which is it? I don't care whether it's incompetence or whether it's straight out dishonesty from you. Either is a reason for you to shut down your channel and remain silent permanently on matters of lipids and nutrition, because you're out of your depth and you're out of your lane. You are misinforming people on a grand scale. You are giving them dangerous and contraindicated disinformation, like in this video here, where you're telling people it's a good idea for them to attempt to artificially lower their ApoB level as expressed by their genes. It's not a good idea. What's next?
For plaque to begin. So that's why we care about it. And that's in a nutshell what it is.
Okay, so you've got no idea what you're talking about, Gil. Great.
Okay, that was the background on ApoB.
No, it wasn't. That was Gil Carvalho's philosophy. That was an ideology. That was propaganda. He's not the only one that holds that opinion. I'll give him that, but that doesn't make it right. It is false. There are no studies that inform on risk, cause and effect, hazard, odds, likelihood, or anything else. Okay, what's next?
How should we think about it from a clearance and production standpoint? And
why should we bother? It's not an established risk factor or matter for concern. Let's just let our bodies get on with doing what they do, taking care of this stuff.
how can we use non-drug interventions to lower our heart disease?
So bigging the question fallacy from this point on, is it, boys? ApoB is a risk because you say so. It isn't. Ergo, we just accept that it's a risk because you say so, and now we need to lower it. No, that is still a bad idea, apparently. Goodness gracious, is this hard to understand? Is it really?
It's a risk.
Yeah,
no, not risk, still.
There's actually a lot. at multiple levels. We're very lucky to have many ways to intervene, and a lot of this has been studied. So,
associations. Are there any studies that inform us on cause and effect, risk, hazard, or anything remotely similar to that? No, there aren't.
I'll start by kind of painting the picture the way that Dr. William Cromwell did. We had him on. He's a great lipidologist. And we had
I disagree.
him on, and he explained
he explained his ideology, his theology, his take on it. But what he did not do, Gil, is provide any evidence of cause and effect, because it still doesn't exist.
this increase in ApoB like this. Basically, if your ApoB is too high, if the cost...
How high is too high based on what? According to whom? Bloody fly. Who asked you in here? Get out. Go on. Thank you.
concentration of those lipoproteins is too high.
No, again, too high according to whom? On the basis of what? Okay.
Two things could be going on. You could be producing too many, or you could be clearing too few.
Or neither of those could be correct. It could be that it's still under the control of your genes, and it could be that your genes still know what they're doing, because they do.
Right? Or it could be a mix of both.
Or neither.
So, lucky for us, there's ways to intervene at both of those sides of the equation.
Why would you? That is still a bad idea.
Production and the clearance with lifestyle before we even get to the drugs, the prescriptions. So starting with the production side.
I mean, that's a clear bit of evidence right there that Gil has never practiced medicine. Because if he did practice medicine and he publicly said you shouldn't use drugs, he'd be struck off the medical register. He'd lose his job as a physician. Because those guys are mandated to push drugs. There it is right there.
Insulin resistance
It's still a construct.
and central adiposity are things that tend to induce ApoB production. They tend to increase it. So people who are insulin resistant tend to have higher ApoB than people who are insulin sensitive.
You mean people who you've decided are insulin resistant on the basis of the construct of insulin resistance and the false begging the question fallacy that insulin resistance, so-called, is pathological rather than adaptive. It's just rubbish, Gil. You're completely out of your depth.
Sensitive. And so weight loss, or more specifically, loss of fat mass, loss of excess fat mass, tends to improve ApoB levels.
No, not improve. It tends to change in that set of circumstances because, Gil, your genes still know what they're doing and they react to the conditions in which you place them at any given time. Genes are reactive. Did you know that, Gil?
And so another thing that's very interesting is that we published another recent video on this. So obviously you can lose weight just by cutting calories.
Fuck me, really? Can't be asked with that today. Let's move on.
And that does tend to improve ApoB.
No. Again, improve? No. Lower, potentially, but that's not a good thing. Still.
But exercise, even keeping calories constant and keeping weight constant.
How are you going to do that, Gil? How are you going to keep so-called calories constant? Please explain. Should we wait for that? No? Okay.
Can have a pretty substantial effect as well, an additional effect. So we covered a study where they started out with people who were insulin resistant.
Okay, so begging the question fallacy again. Improvements, it says, assuming that lowering ApoB is in fact an improvement. It's not. Still. So what on this study?
And just the weight loss with diet brought down their insulin resistance a lot. So they became...
You mean the construct or your idea of what insulin resistance is? It's the body adaptively altering metabolism, once again, on the basis of the situation, the conditions in which those genes are placed at that time. For goodness sake.
Became 80% more insulin sensitive
Still a construct.
than at baseline. Then
Exercise greatly sensitizes the human system, specifically the muscles, the skeletal muscles mostly. It makes them vastly more thirsty for glucose out of the blood. And they become vastly more effective at withdrawing glucose from the blood, precisely because when you exercise, you need more carbohydrate from the blood to subserve that. It's no surprise. And also, all of that said, big fat, so what?
half of them exercise on top of the diet, but weight stable and isocaloric.
How do you know, Gil? Would you like to explain how you know that? Of course, first you'll have to show us that you do not understand even what a calorie is in order to even attempt that. So that'll be a laugh. Tell you what, why don't you just come and debate me, Gil Carvalho, instead of running like a scared little puppy dog from me. Come and front me face to face and we'll deal with your ridiculous nonsense face to face. Bet you won't.
And it doubled the benefit. So it went
Benefit, you say? No, still. Benefit, improvement, similar sort of terminology, same answer. Absolute rubbish.
to 160% more insulin sensitive than the guys that had the
Who
exercise.
says that's better? It is what it is at that time because the genes have decided that at that time, on the basis that exercise is or has been happening, that we better be more effective at withdrawing glucose from the blood and using it to power that exercise. So what?
On top. That actually surprised me, the magnitude.
Well, that just shows you don't know what you're talking about, doesn't it? Goodness gracious. I'm glad I'm coming up for a holiday next week. I'm going to Hawaii next week. So I'm going to enjoy that. And, you know, that's a chance for me to sit back and not worry about who's wrong on the interwebs for a week or so. So if you're wondering why I'm not around next week, that's why.
Of that effect. So yeah, those can have a substantial effect in improving insulin resistance, reducing adiposity, and improving ApoB. For some people, that's enough. It gets them to where where we need to be.
No, we have no idea. You have no idea where a person needs to be in terms of ApoB, Gil. No idea at all. You're completely pissing into the wind here.
Healthy range.
Healthy range according to whom? On the basis of what? No? Thought not.
Sometimes it moves the needle, but it's still too high.
According to whom? On the basis of what?
If that happens, that's indicative that it's a clearance problem on the other end of the
False. It's not indicative of anything of the sort. All of this is a philosophy, a theology, a belief structure. None of this is based on experimental science. This is hypothetical stuff.
the equation, right? That we're probably not producing too many, but we are just not clearing them. We're not
Absolute rubbish, Gil. Do you have anything to say of any value? I know you don't.
getting rid of them. So they accumulate in the bloodstream and the level remains high. And so there's a number of things you can do on that end.
Why would you? Your genes are taking care of it still.
The main factor is probably this, what's called the PS ratio. So the ratio of polyunsaturated fats to saturated fats. And really it's any unsaturated fat, because monounsaturated has the same effect. It might just be a little less potent than poly, but they both have this effect. So
What are you talking about, Gil?
even mechanistically, saturated fat, a diet very high in saturated fat, there's some heterogeneity there. So I'm kind of simplifying this. Not all saturated fatty acids are the same. But in general, a diet very high in saturated fats will tend to reduce the number of LDL receptors on the surface of our liver.
Wow. Maybe that's your body reacting knowing that it doesn't need the extra, and as such, it's not absorbed there. So it goes to the transporter in the digestive system where you can excrete excess to the feces to get rid of it. What a shock. Once again, the genes reacting to the environment in which you place them at that time, according to the needs of the person at that time. Wow.
And LDL receptors are these little docking stations where these lipoproteins dock, and then they're pulled out of circulation. So specifically these ApoB carrying lipoproteins, some more than others, but that's the gist of it. So a diet very high in saturated fat, less docking stations, these lipoproteins stay in circulation longer, their level goes up.
So?
More unsaturated fats, especially poly, the opposite happens. More docking stations on the surface, more lipoproteins being pulled out of circulation.
So?
The level comes down.
So?
So in terms of some actionable shifts in diet.
Well, you still haven't given us any reason to undertake any kind of action whatsoever. You're just going to continue to beg the question. Wow.
This would be things like, swapping some of the butter for unsaturated spreads like peanut butter or...
Oh my God, are you stoned? But seriously, we're being told here by Gil Carvalho that we should swap butter, for example, for peanut butter. No, Gil, we should do no such thing under any circumstances. Absolutely not.
Avocado.
No.
On your toast or something like that.
Toast? No. Sorry, Dave.
Some of the fatty meats, go to leaner meats or go...
No. Absolutely the wrong thing to do. Why on earth would you do that?
Go to fatty fish. That's another, or some of the bacon also to some fatty fish. That's another productive switch.
No, it isn't.
If you cook in solid fats at room temperature, so lard, coconut oil, these things tend to be higher in saturated fats.
So?
If you switch to more liquid fats,
then you're asking for a problem because those are the ones that you're not evolved to do well consuming. Those are the ones that will cause inflammation probably. Those are the ones that will set off things like atherosclerosis, for example. Okay, not the saturated ones, you buffoon.
There are a number of them. People have different tastes. Olive oil, avocado oil.
Both pro-inflammatory.
Canola oil are some examples with a lot of evidence behind them.
No, there isn't.
Nuts and seeds, that's another source of
oxalates, other toxins, anti-nutrients. Nuts and seeds are absolutely among the most toxic parts of plants. Buffoon.
Saturated fats. So this type of tweaking
is absolutely ridiculous and should not be undertaken under any circumstances.
Tends to reduce ApoB.
So what? Bad idea. Still.
Other things, even carbohydrate to some extent in studies, switching from carbohydrates to unsaturated fats can also have this effect because carbohydrates are kind of neutral.
They're nothing of the sort, Gil. Carbohydrates are contraindicated toxins in the diet. There are no circumstances under which a person should consume any significant amount of carbohydrate whatsoever.
But unless it's in very high amount, in which case they can increase VLDLs, which are a type of ApoB lipoprotein. But in general, switching some carb to unsaturated fats can also have this effect of nudging the ApoB down.
Why would you want to do that? Because it's still a bad idea.
And then other things that people ask about, dietary cholesterol, common question. People ask if it's if they have high cholesterol or high ApoB because they ate too much cholesterol.
Again, begging the question fallacy that so-called high cholesterol is a problem. It isn't. Still,
Not necessarily. It's a relatively minor factor compared to the ones we've talked about. And it depends on genetics. Some people for most people, it's a significant but modest effect of dietary cholesterol.
So what?
So eating eggs versus not eating eggs might affect your LDL cholesterol by like 7 points, 10 points in that range.
Who gives a shit?
But some people, about 20 to 30%, are hyperabsorbers of cholesterol.
So?
And those people can have a big change.
So?
By modulating dietary cholesterol. So something to bear in mind. And that can reflect in ApoB as well.
So?
What else? Fiber, the amount of fiber in the diet, especially soluble fiber, can help bring ApoB down.
Help? No. Bringing ApoB down is still a bad idea, Gil.
Some sources are oats, barley, eggplant, apples.
Okay, you're a complete fucking idiot. What's next?
Okra, soluble fibers. If you look up soluble fiber sources, you'll get lists on Google.
All right. Good science there, Gil. We should all go and look on Google, should we? That's how science is done. Boys and girls, you go and look on Dr. Google. Still, Dr. Google is just as much a doctor as Gil Carvalho is, so what the hell?
Berries are a good source as well. And then ultra-processed foods can have an effect of increasing ApoB.
So?
Used to be that trans fats, industrial trans fats, were a factor. Now, not so much because they've been kind of discontinued in the US at least. But concentrated fructose can have this effect as well.
Oh, really? Interesting. But still, so?
So sodas, sugar-sweetened beverages can have an effect of nudging up ApoB. So
400 grams a day of fruit and honey, Paul Saladino, that could be an interesting thing, couldn't it? Not because of anything to do with lipoproteins, by the way, but it's actually more to do with the glycation damage that absolutely does not show up on an HbA1c test, Paul. What's next?
So moderating that can help.
Help? No. Again, the word help? No. Trying to artificially mess around with your lipoproteins is not helpful. It's contraindicated. It's a stupid idea. It's as ignorant as fuck, Gil.
Soy protein, there are some studies showing that soy...
Oh, Christ. Now he's going to start promoting soy. Seriously? No.
Protein can help bring down ApoB as well.
No, again, help? No. Not helpful. Still a bad idea.
That's it off the top of my head for dietary tips and exercise tips.
Well, great. Tell us again, Gil, all about your qualifications as a lipidologist or as a nutritionist. No qualifications in that field whatsoever. Right. Good. Okay. So your opinion, Gil, is absolutely worthless on this. Okay. What's next?
We touched on exercise. And then supplements, I guess, fits under the umbrella of lifestyle. It's not quite, it's a hybrid between lifestyle and prescription meds. It's a limbo. So there are a number of supplements that have been shown to help lower both.
Again, with the word help. No, this is not helpful. Still.
Cholesterol and ApoB.
Doesn't need intervening. Still.
The effect is generally modest compared to like a statin or something like that. But it can help nudge the numbers a little bit.
Again, no.
Red yeast rice can work. Psyllium husk.
Oh, this is just pointless, isn't it, kids? The whole thing is an absolute, total waste of your time and mine.
Can work. It's essentially a fiber supplement. You mix it in water and you drink it. So those are some examples. There's a couple of others.
Only if you're an imbecile would you do that.
Stanols, phytostanols is another thing out there. Yeah, that's essentially it. For most people, those tweaks can have a substantial effect.
So what?
And for most people, can get them in the healthy range.
No. Again, according to whom? On the basis of what?
Sometimes people have genetic limitations and are doing everything right, and they're still not there. No shame. It's we're not all built the same. We have viewers that their lifestyle is like.
Okay, so waffle now. Now it's just going to devolve into absolute, utter, mindless waffle.
Picture perfect. They bike miles and miles every day. They eat everything perfect, but
according to whom?
It's still too high, and
according to whom?
That's when the pharmacological tools come in. That's
for what purpose? None.
But therefore, no shame in going that route.
Yeah, there is, because it shows how mindless a person is if they would allow anybody to convince them that they need to take this dangerous, contraindicated, toxic nonsense in order to intervene on their blood lipid levels that do not need intervening. And there is no benefit in doing so. Interesting, isn't it?
That was a tremendous amount of information.
No, it wasn't. It was a tremendous pile of turd, Nicholas. It was an absolute errant mess of fetid dingo's kidneys. It was the mad ramblings of a complete imbecile. And the fact that you would endorse it as being of value and good places you once again securely in the same pile of turd.
Nicely packed together by
absolute garbage. It was mindless waffle without any reference to common sense or science.
Gil, if you'd like a document with everything succinctly put together for you, I'll have one in my free community under the free resources.
Absolutely. I'm always taking advice from students on matters of very important matters of my health. Of course, I'd like to do that, Nicholas.
Which is linked in the description of this video. That said, I'll have more content with Dr. Carvalho releasing soon, so stay tuned.
Please don't. I'm going to fucking kill you, you fly. I'm going to get you if it kills me. I don't like summer for flies and for heat. Anyway, I better sign off before I lose it completely. All right. Thanks for joining me. See you in a couple of weeks when I'm back from Hawaii, where it'll be hot and sunny probably. And there might be flies. Or not. Who knows? I'm guessing. I've never been there. Still, apparently it's perfectly okay to come online and make complete guesses about things that you know nothing about. Apparently. See you then. Ciao for now.